The play on the field, the court, and the ice is just one part of sports. Behind every game are the people hard at work so we can enjoy the action. They're the owners, administrators, agents, broadcasters, and vendors who bring the games to life. Meet them when you go Behind the Game with Patrick Klinger and Dave Boden.
Welcome to Behind the Game, presented by KLN Family Brands, a wonderful Minnesota company that makes great products like Sweet Chaos, Drizzled Popcorn, and Wily Wallaby Licorice. They also produce Nutrisource pet foods, really a high-quality pet food. So support them because they do so many wonderful things in our community. KLN Family Brands. I'm Patrick Klinger, president of Agile Marketing Partners. Alongside me, a man who's always wanted to be a professional high jumper, but he keeps walking into bars.
Walking into bars, interesting.
That's Dave. Highbrow humor.
Yeah.
No, we had a very special guest planned for today, Charles Adams, who's the head of security for the Minnesota Twins and also the head football coach at North Community High School football team. Wonderful man. He just got his wires a little bit crossed today, so he's going to be on the show in January or February. So, Dave and I are going to recap sports that really dominated the scene in 2025, sort of a year-end review of the sports scene.
We'll wing it. We've prepared nothing, but I sit here, I'm thinking, okay, we don't have our guest, but I have a guest who's been heavily involved in the sports scene for many years. So Patrick, for anybody that doesn't know, you probably do, but Patrick was VP of Marketing and was with the Twins for 14 years, so heavily involved in the operations of the Twins, 14 seasons. And then since then, been involved with your own sports marketing business for another 13. You're working with all kinds of sports and businesses around the Twin Cities. So I'm going to turn the tables on you a little bit and maybe throw a topic or two out for you and get your thoughts.
Yeah, fantastic.
How would that be? And then we can take it from there.
Let's do it.
Thinking about the pro sports scene in 2025, Minnesota, we've got the Vikings, the Twins, Wild Wolves, all had some different levels of success and expectations. What do you think just right now of the pro sports scene here in Minnesota? We tend to feel sorry for ourselves for never winning, and I'm not sure that's going to change soon. I hope it is. But what do you see out there that we should maybe look forward to?
Well, I think we're going through a tough time in Minnesota sports. Obviously, the Vikings are having a very disappointing season, coming off 13 wins last year. They've got 4 this year against 8 losses. The quarterback, J.J. McCarthy, certainly hasn't turned out to be exactly what the team has hoped for. I think they'll use the balance of the season to try to get them ready for 2026. The Twins, obviously, a very disappointing season to the point that they let go of their manager, Rocco Baldelli. The ownership has taken a lot of hits. I think for the fact that they have not invested a lot of money in the team. Fans are getting frustrated by that. There was certainly speculation that they would sell the Twins this year and announced, of course, about midway through the season that would not happen, and that disappointed some people because I think they were ready for some new leadership and maybe an owner who was going to be a little bit more aggressive in spending. The Wild started slow, but they're playing really pretty well right now. They seem to have found a fantastic goalie in Wallstedt, maybe the best in the NHL right now.
Right this minute.
Yeah. Timberwolves, of course, they went to the Western Conference Finals last season, the second year in a row. High expectations for this year. They're sort of muddling along right now, not playing particularly well, but not playing awful. Just sort of treading water a little bit right now. What Minnesota needs is a feel-good sports story, I think, Dave. And I don't think we have one yet. The long-suffering Minnesota sports fans are ready to really get behind a winner, whether it's the Twins next year, the Wild, maybe the Wild this year, the Timberwolves, Vikings in 2026, but we're ready.
I think that the team that as a city that we need to make that leap is the Vikings. I'm not sure we're going to see that. I think the team that has seemed to be closest to that over the last couple of years was the Wolves. They're getting to the edge, but they don't seem to be quite in the caliber of the top couple of teams. And I'm not sure they're there even this year. Again, like you said, they're muddling along. Do you think there is a reasonable chance there that they could take that leap? Can we assume maybe they can coast a bit in the regular season and turn it on when they need to, or are they just an ingredient away?
Yeah,
somehow?
they did that last year. I don't think that they were a terrific team from start to finish last year. They were just a team that got to the end of the season, started playing their best basketball, and of course that carried them over into the Western Conference Finals. But it's hard for me to imagine that they're going to get past a team like the Thunder, right? I mean, they're just so good, and they're playing extraordinary basketball again this season. It would be ironic in the sense that the Timberwolves organization, for most of its existence, was not very good. They weren't good on the court. They weren't good off the court. They had, all kinds of challenges. And if they were the one to deliver a championship to Minnesota, I think it would be pretty remarkable. I don't know that they're ready to get there this year. Obviously, they've got a superstar in Anthony Edwards, but they just seem to be maybe that,
There's one
more step they need to take.
So let me give you a bigger topic and maybe a thought or two myself. When we're looking at pro sports, one of the things that has changed dramatically, and in a short amount of time, I would say to a certain extent, is not just the acceptance of gambling by the various sports leagues, but the actual integration of gambling into almost everything. And that's at the networks, the teams, all through that, where it's part of the game. And I think what we've seen explode now is not just you can bet on games and bet on point spreads and some of those kinds of things, but you can bet on plays that happen through a game in real time. And we've started to even see some of the cases that have come up about, some activity of certain players or teams that may be taking advantage of that. I don't think we know all that yet, but it seems like we're maybe opening a Pandora's box with gambling. And I personally really do actually worry about the integrity of the games, specifically with the real-time prop bets on everything that can happen. So, I mean, somebody doesn't have to be wanting to throw a game to miss their first free throw and pocket $10,000 for somebody. So you've been in sports for many years on the inside, on the business part. Are you worried for where this is going?
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. Absolutely. And we're seeing it happen, right? I mean, we've got pitchers who are working with gamblers, supposedly, allegedly, working with gamblers, and they notify the gambler that I'm going to throw a ball on this pitch. They work it out before the game, and when I come in, first pitch is going to be a ball, and that a prop bet is made by these gamblers. And when I was with the Minnesota Twins, when I was in baseball, we stayed away, as did all sports, as far away as you could from gambling. Every clubhouse door in Major League Baseball has a sign on it. When you exit the door from the clubhouse, it's all about gambling. And there was this idea that we would never, ever get into bed with gambling for all the reasons that you just explained. Well, what's happened? The checks got big enough, right? So suddenly teams, leagues are saying, well, maybe we can do this.
Yeah, not to interrupt, but if you watch, well, keep going, but if you're watching a game on ESPN now, they got the game, they got all their information about the game, and then over in a corner, there's live odds for a next prop bet. Somebody's going to score a goal, somebody's, going to score 10 points in the next quarter. I mean, that's live while you're watching a game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's happened is the money became so big that the teams and leagues couldn't look away from it. they also wanted to engage younger fans who maybe wouldn't sit down and watch a 3-hour game, but they might if they got money on the line.
Yeah.
And that was very enticing to the sports industry. And so Pandora's box has been open. There's no question about it. Everybody's involved in it. Minnesota, I think, is one of the only 11 states now that doesn't allow legalized betting in state. Of course, there are ways around that. But I think sports has gotten in bed with the devil, and we're starting to see what's becoming of that. It's going to be a huge issue, I believe, going forward for really years to come. And the leagues have to figure this out. And the other piece is, of course, that the leagues would stay away from Las Vegas. There was absolutely no chance that they were going to put a team in Las Vegas. They didn't do anything in Las Vegas. They cautioned their players about going to Las Vegas. Well, again, that's changed. You know, Major League Baseball is going to have a team there. The NHL is already there. The NFL is already there. So it's, I think it's going to have a tremendous impact on sports in the foreseeable future, and I think the leagues have to figure it out.
Yeah, I think it extends as well to the college game. We both have our teams. You've pointed that out a few times on this show before.
Yeah. How'd things go last Saturday?
I enjoyed a long run of dominance with my Badgers and your Gophers. And unfortunately, over the last few years, that reign of terror from the Badgers has disappeared and maybe has gone the other way. And I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. But I still enjoy, I think you do as well, the rivalry and the games, you know, college football and a football Saturday and all of those things. I think we're equally old school. And with the rollout of NIL and players being able to receive money and be directly paid now, which was probably inevitable and probably legally makes sense that they should be able to be paid. And yet, it's really changed the fabric of the game. And if you tie that in with the transfer portal, it's basically free agency in the college level, moving team to team. And if you're the Badgers or the Gophers, what I see, and many other teams that don't have the championship pedigree of the top 10 or 20 now, you're in a position where you may take some good players from lower level programs in the transfer portal yourself, but when you got players that break out, they might want to go play at Alabama or Georgia or LSU or Ohio State, and they move on. So you can't get the best of the best coming up, and you can't hold the best of the best because you're kind of in the middle. And how do you ever aspire to get over it? Now, we've seen Indiana have some success, and maybe it all is just, why can't they have as much money as anybody else? But where do you see that going? Or it's harder to enjoy your teams a little bit when you don't know the players, when you know they're going to come and go no matter what now. It's the same as the pros.
I'd even argue it's more challenging than the pros because the pros have contracts, right?
Yeah, right.
You know, they're going to be under contract for a year or a couple of years. College doesn't have that really. You know, they get a player who commits, and if that player isn't getting the playing time he likes, if he or she isn't getting the money that they want, or have an opportunity to go onto a bigger stage at an Ohio State or an Alabama, they go. And the transfer portal, I'm glad to see that it's been reduced from 2 to 1 a year.
Yes.
So it makes it just a little bit harder to jump around. But I think it's been a real challenge for college sports because the coaches have to continually recruit their own teams.
Right.
You know, the Gophers have, they had a sort of a typical Gopher season, right? And they're going to go to a bowl game, which they typically do. Not a big bowl game, but they'll
I
go.
remember when the Badgers would go to bowl games. So yes, that
Yeah,
I didn't appreciate it as much as I should have a
yeah,
few years ago.
perhaps. And they've got a young quarterback, played his first season and really was fantastic. There's concern that he's going to leave. They think he'll stay, but if enough money is put out there by a bigger program, he's going to go. So I've been told by athletic directors and coaches that having NIL sort of evens the playing field, because if you get enough money, you can buy players to come in. I personally believe it's just the opposite. I think the rich are going to get richer. The Ohio States and the Alabamas and the LSUs, they're Texas A&M, spending a huge amount of money in NIL. And then you're going to have programs like Minnesota and maybe Wisconsin, Northwestern. They're not going to be able to fund it in the same level. And so those programs, the rich programs, are going to get richer, and I think the middling programs are going to stay there or maybe even drop. Eventually, there may just be a super league. You get maybe 20, 30 teams that they all can compete at a high level, and then the Minnesotas and the Wisconsins and teams like that we're going to be in a different level.
It's still a great game day experience to go to games. I still enjoy college sports, but it's much harder to have loyalty to your team when you don't know players. Now, football with 90 roster spots, maybe that's not, but something like basketball, you used to get to know the players pretty well. You'd have 5, 6, 7 players that play, and you see them grow from freshmen at least 2 or 3 years, if not more. Now they cut out, but it's a hurdle. It's a hurdle for people to enjoy, and I think I don't know where it's going to go. I mean, maybe people will always respond because it's college football, it's their college, and they love it. But I worry with that as well.
I do too, Dave, and I look at a program like Minnesota. First of all, I think we're a pro sports state, first and foremost. We have every major professional sports here, and I think the Gophers, in some ways, a little bit of a redheaded stepchild to the pros. So they operate in the shadows of the Vikings and the other teams, pro teams in the market. But we don't have a history of success, not like in Ohio State or Michigan. We play in a smaller stadium, 50,000. Penn State's got, 104, 105,000. Climate is an issue.
Yeah.
There's
always that.
There's certain players who maybe from the South and from here, they just don't want to play in cold weather, and that's an issue. And then because of all of those things, I don't think the NIL money is flowing here the way that we had hoped that it would, or certainly the university athletic department thought that it would, and that makes it hard. You've got to take a smaller amount of money, divvy it up between different programs. Find players that can be competitive, and then hope you can retain them. That's a heavy lift.
Back to the pros, just a minute. We've seen here in the Twin Cities a real run of success for the Minnesota Lynx on the women's side. And now the WNBA is going through some fairly significant labor issues in terms of pay and pay equity and attendance and the various things they have to deal with that you're very well familiar. But and so we've seen great success up to the semifinals last year, but historically great success, including last year. Is that filling a gap, or is it on the path to be the same as the others, where you've always got labor and everybody's salaries are never enough, and they should be paid more, and yet this is what we see as fans through the years. Are they going to go on strike? Is there somebody's going to leave because he's going to make $30 million instead of $20 million, or $100 million instead of $80 million, or all the places money. So where do you kind of see that going? Maybe the NBA or the WNBA is the best example because they're at a pretty peer level to the men's leagues, but.
I think the surge in women's sports is for real. This isn't, sort of a feel-good story anymore. People genuinely have interest in women's sports, and it's great to see.
We've just added volleyball as well,
yeah,
right?
two. I think there are two professional volleyball teams scheduled to come to Minnesota women's volleyball. But it's real, and fans are into watching great female athletes. The WNBA has surged in popularity over the last couple of years. Some brilliant talent. Obviously, the Lynx, they have been the one historically good team in this market. Won a bunch of championships and have come close the last few seasons. But they are vastly underpaid compared to their male counterparts. I mean, you look at the average salary in the NBA versus the WNBA. Right. I mean, it's no comparison. It's why so many women basketball players have to play overseas because they're just not getting enough compensation here. So I think we're getting to that point where the scales will be much more balanced between men's sports and women's sports, and I think along with that comes all the issues, the labor issues.
Right.
Men's sports have they've had their trials and tribulations over the years. I think we're starting to see that happen in women's sports as well.
With all the sports, maybe the women's sports at the pro level, even college level as well. You've probably seen some of the Big Ten and college women's volleyballs. It's amazing entertainment. It's so good. You were heavily involved and have been through your whole sports career in marketing and the game day experience and making a great experience all around for customers. And yet, because of everything else we've been talking about, the cost of attending games or going to a game and having it's through the roof. It's not even, if you're a family of four trying to go to a Wild game, you can easily be looking at $1,000, to go to a game. I mean, I'm sure you can find ways to go less, but the point is that, so I think, you can correct me, but in your experience, you had to drive that game day experience because it's not just, it's like, how do we get people to pay this kind of money to come and watch the same game? So we've got all the entertainment in the game and everything else that's happening, but I do worry as well a little bit that the price point for all these sports, and college will be no different with NIL and paying players and all that, is pushing people out. And the women's sports may be, at least right now, a good alternative. Maybe they'll see a surge in interest because they can still offer a product at a reasonable price for a great competition.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Women's sports are, the ticket to get in isn't quite the same level, though, the volleyball program at the University of Minnesota, they sell out every match.
Right. That actually is the same in Wisconsin as well. That's one of their big sports.
But certainly a ticket to see a Lynx game is going to cost you less than it would if you wanted to see the Timberwolves. But hopefully, again, we'd love to see women get compensated the same way that men are. That's probably going to require increase in ticket prices. But it's also what we're seeing: corporations get behind women's sports. There are more sponsors than ever before. The games are now on national television on a regular basis. Caitlin Clark had a lot to do with that. Right. When she played, everybody watched.
Yeah.
So it's great. But also to your point of the cost of attending a sporting event, it really is getting to a place where it's almost only corporations seemingly can get at least, the cost of attending a Vikings game, I don't know what it is for a family of four, but it's got to probably be close, if you've got decent tickets, probably close to $1,000.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
And then I've been to a couple of Vikings games this year, and there's no guarantee you're going to see a good game.
Right.
Right?
Right.
I mean, you spend a lot of money, and you show up, and you're face painted and ready to cheer on your team, and I think they've won one game so far at US Bank Stadium this year, and I think, boy, people paying a lot of money to walk out disappointed.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you had season tickets, and which a lot of them are now. It seems like in all the sports, at least. Well, maybe not as much baseball, but I'm not quite sure. How do you think all that's changed in the time you've been involved? And look at the whole game day experience, because that was your job,
Mm-hmm.
and it is often kind of related to what you're doing on the marketing side now.
Yeah.
Are we at a tipping point at some point where it's like, I kind of just want to come see a game. I don't necessarily want to be blasted by loud or excessively loud music, and again, I'm kind of old school. I liked when, I'm probably way too old school, but I liked it when the crowd would get going, because it was the time in the game that people knew, hey, we got to get going here, instead of having somebody scream it every few minutes to get loud as part of the stuff. And you've seen it firsthand.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's, because ticket prices are so high, teams want to make sure that you're entertained. You feel like you've got your money's worth, regardless of how the team plays, right? I'm with you. And maybe it's just because I'm an old guy, but if I go to a Timberwolves game, for instance, I mean, they now play music during the action.
Yeah.
Hey, it just never stops. It is relentless. And you're constantly told to chant defense and, clap your hands, and nothing organically happens anymore. I think that's one of the great things about soccer, actually. If you've attended a Loons game, there is none of that. Everything that happens is organic. You've got the fans, the wall, and they're waving flags and chanting and singing, and it's fantastic. And there's no public address announcer that's yelling at you constantly to get on your feet, to clap, to yell. And there's something, I think that's just much more pure about that. But watching a game in person, particularly the NBA, I think, and even the NHL has gotten there. It's just unrelenting.
Yeah, that is still a benefit of baseball to a certain extent, right? As you have some of those elements in between innings and things, but it's still kind of a relaxing game. But certainly the other three seem to be just pounding at you every minute. So I know we're running close to our end. So I'll thank you for this year-end recap, for sharing some of your insights.
What are you excited about? Let me ask you quickly. What are you excited about in 2026? What team, what news story related to sports are you excited about?
I love all these teams. Minnesota teams, plus my Badgers are huge. I'm not terribly optimistic about most of them. What I'd like to see is I'd love to see a Stanley Cup run here. I'm not even saying we got to have the cup, but we make a run. And we've heard that for a number of years now, that we're getting to that point where we now have the money and we can do that. So I'd really like to see that. I'm just not sure I can say I'm looking forward to it exactly. I'm wary of that.
Yeah, when you plant your flag and you say you're the state of hockey, and then 25 years you haven't sniffed the Stanley Cup yet, I think that might be the most frustrating.
And I was thinking that we may see the Vikings make a run this year. So I don't know how to judge.
Well, Dave, great conversation. Really appreciate it. Appreciate all of you for watching Behind the Game in 2025. We're excited to see you again in 2026. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next year. And thanks to KLN Family Brands.